too. There have been nasty dimensions to the youth crime wave in the past 18 months. Carjackings, aggravated burglaries, those brazen, violent robberies of shops in broad daylight. In the studio with me, three people who've each felt the brunt of those offences. All have spoken out, all have got ideas on what we need to do, all are getting on with things. I mean, people talk about victims. We don't really... A lot of people are not victims in this. Yes, they've undergone the trauma of the crime, but they don't let themselves be victims. I think that's a very important point to notice. Michael Talal is with me. He was carjacked and assaulted on Toorak Road, Anzac Day last year. We talked to him at the time, or just after it. He's set upon by 6 men, hit on the head with a bat. It was one of the first carjackings. Jade Gormley is here. She was a victim of an aggravated burglary late March. Woke up with, I think, about 5 men in her bedroom demanding cash, threatening to kill her, waving sticks around. We spoke to her at the time. And Tony Fialades is the co-owner of IMP Jewellers, robbed twice. And I've spoken to him as well. Thank you all very much for coming in. Jade, you first, as you move on from the events, how does it affect your life? Is there any effect lasting?
There's definitely some lasting effects on me, more so with my sleep. I actually struggle to sleep most nights. I've never been a prescription medication person, and I do need to take something to be able to sleep through the night.
Well, just to recap, these men came into your room, you're asleep, came in your bedroom, belting sticks on the bed and that sort of thing, breaking things?
Yeah, so they came in, they were very aggressive, screaming, waving them in my face with threats and stuff, and then the others went through my other housemates in their room with machetes, so quite violent. They didn't physically hurt us, but the threats were enough to make us feel like it was going to happen.
What about you, Michael? Because, I mean, you work in the airline industry. You would travel around the streets at strange hours of the day and night. Does it affect you still?
Oh, look, absolutely. Until now, I still do feel the effects of what had happened to me last year. I still get the nightless sleeps. Every time I'm on the aircraft, when it's a bit dark and I'm out in the cabin, if somebody approaches me, unexpectedly, it still startles me, and I still experience panic attacks and things like that all the time.
That's interesting, even on the aircraft, because I would have thought, apart from what happened earlier this morning, I would have thought you'd feel in a fairly secure environment because you'd be so comfortable with it.
I think it's just the darkness and the unexpected approach of somebody when you think everybody's asleep and somebody comes from behind you and taps you on the shoulder or something like that. So it's just the surprise of it, what startles me and what sort of can sometimes lead to a panic attack or similar.
It's a side issue, but as a person in the airline industry, you must shudder when you hear what happened with that Malaysian Airlines flight.
Absolutely, that's the scariest thing that could happen. It's something that none of us hope to have to experience or have to do, but it is a reality these days.
Tony, the robberies on your shop, violent, aggressive, and we're not talking about people responsible, that's all up for the courts. Violent, aggressive, threatening. How do you feel about them now? I remember you were sort of angry at the time, weren't you?
Oh, incredibly angry. The aftermath, of course, just goes on and on. My wife really worries about it continuously. She's now worrying about home, talking about security this morning. Work colleagues, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Of course, you worry about them. You worry about keeping the business going because the cost of replacing stock still haven't been paid for the second robbery by an insurance company, and that's nearly 6 months now. So we have to be able to carry that. Fortunately, we can do it. One of our work colleagues, I was with her the other day, and she doesn't seem any better than she was a few months ago. So
she was one day back, wasn't she?
Yeah, one day back, and she copped it again. Yeah, so I mean, it's a ludicrous situation, but obviously we all want to move on, and I think the important thing today is if we can get a few ideas going for the future.
Okay, well, you kick it off. What ideas have you got?
Well,
we have a crime wave.
Yeah,
continue.
Okay. Well, for me, I was talking to Jade outside earlier about it, and we got similar ideas. First of all, I think it's the government's responsibility to look after us That's the first responsibility in my mind. I think the judiciary is out of touch. I keep reading about some horrendous crimes and people getting a few years or a few months or nothing at all. I mean, I know a lot of people in Toorak come to me, and a lot of them are reasonable, and a lot of them are actually in the legal system themselves, and even they can't work it out.
So you think we need tougher sentences?
Look, I think there's got to be something like a minimum sentence or something like that, where instead of, I think they're averaged at the moment. I'm not sure. I think partly they're averaged, but I think we do need minimum sentences. I have a feeling that people do it because they can, and they can get away with it. I've heard that with a lot of these young offenders, they are told by the people manipulating them that don't worry too much. First offence, not much will happen to you.
Have you met some of the people accused of the robbery?
I actually have.
How does that happen?
It's something the justice system organises.
How did it go?
Well, look, I was very much enlightened. I thought the families. I felt some of their pain as well. The families.
The families of the offenders.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and I believe that these people need to be brought out into the open so that they can have a say as well. They might actually help the situation, but we don't hear a word from the government about anything. I mean, it's been over 30 jewellery shops robbed in about 10 months.
But did you? They were all young African, well, men of African parents. I don't know if they're Australian born, but did you get any understanding of how they could behave like that?
Look, I can't talk too much about this anyway. It's juvenile court. And
fair enough. Fair enough. No, that's all right. Jade, what do you think? What ideas do you have? What do we do?
Yeah, so speaking about, why these juveniles behave the way they do, if their families, aren't actually involved in any way, so where's it starting? Where's the root of the problem? And how can we... because it's not publicised what is going on within these communities, what's going on within these gangs, or how they are formed and where the manipulation process begins for them to actually, offend like they do and then re-offend and think it's okay because they get away with it and told this. So where's the root of the problem when it's not publicised? Or
any ideas? What is the basis of the problem?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's not brought to public knowledge, and that's what I think is something that's important to investigate in, because it seems to be that it's always just treating the effect, but it's only going to keep happening if we don't find out where it's coming from and why. Do
you feel any sympathy at all for the people who attacked you? Attacked your house?
I don't feel sympathy for them because they had enjoyment out of doing it, and that's where I don't understand where that's coming from. So what's their purpose? Where did it start? And how can we find that out and then rectify that situation? How can we educate them in a better way?
Michael, your thoughts?
Look, I think as far as what needs to be done, I would have to divide it into two separate areas. We need to have short-term solutions and long-term solutions. The short-term solutions, we need the sentencing to be done as per the laws. So we don't necessarily need tougher sentences because, for example, theft carries a sentence of a maximum of 10 years. Now, 10 years is more than sufficient for a theft.
Yeah, we don't impose
However,
it.
we don't impose it. I was looking up the stats from the Sentencing Advisory Council. Between June 2011 and June 2014, 33.7% of cases resulted in imprisonment. Now, I would be very interested to see what those stats are after the crime wave has started, because that's only been in the last 12 or so months.
Yeah.
I think other things we need to do short term is removing the ambiguities from the acts. So, at the end of the day, the magistrates have the ability to interpret the acts in whichever way they feel on the day. Now, whether that magistrate determines that being on drugs is considered an exceptional circumstance and therefore lets you off with just a fine, is not for them to decide, really, because being on drugs is not an exceptional circumstance. I think it might be helpful that the government introduces something as, such as fingerprints, compulsory fingerprinting for everybody. So when you get your driver's license, you get your fingerprints done.
Gee, civil libertarians wouldn't like that.
Well, they wouldn't like it, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really imposing on any privacy issues. Okay. Nobody has anything to fear. It's just your fingerprint. So unless you've done something wrong, you're not going to lose anything. You're not giving up any of your liberties. All that will happen is when they actually do, when those crimes do happen, the police will be able to identify the attackers within a day or two, rather than, waiting for a whole year before they can charge somebody with theft after a carjacking incident, which happened in my case.
I like that idea. We'll take some calls in a moment and views. What do you think? Compulsory fingerprinting of everybody held on, and then there's the DNA argument too, the DNA database, that we should all be on a DNA database with DNA taken at birth. Yep. 96 900 693 13 13 32. More in a moment.